Hello everyone and welcome to Full Time. Today Fulham humbled Everton 2-0 at home to secure our 5th win of the season. Previous to that, Fulham had only won in the rain, and on the blazing sunshine on the banks of the Thames we put 2 very good goals past an in-form Everton side who had beat Arsenal and Chelsea in the last 2 weeks, securing clean sheets. Today I have with me AF from Fulhamish, our design whiz. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
You said today was incredibly relaxing for you. You came overdressed. How do you think the game went first off?
It was great. It was just a lovely day out, sitting in the sun, watching Fulham pass the ball around Everton and score 2 goals. It was the most relaxed I've been all season.
Perfect. And we've got Jack from world-famous JackAndLoz making your Fulhamish debut today, aren't you? How did you feel the game went today?
Well, I wasn't sitting in the sun, first of all. It was quite chilly if you weren't. But I thought the game was fantastic. I thought that this is the Fulham we've been wanting to see for several games. All of the time Scott's been in charge, I think we've been building up to a game like this. And it finally came. Everyone played well, good goals. Very, very entertaining afternoon. You
said today to us just before we started recording you were quite apprehensive of coming on because you didn't want to come across as, you know, slightly grumpy or upset, but today you must be relishing coming on.
Absolutely, it couldn't have worked out better, really. After every game recently, I've walked away from the ground sighing, miserable, occasionally swearing.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps we all expected that again today, but the guys just pulled this win out of almost nowhere. It was fantastic.
A week and a half after Scott Parker went from being a tactical dummy, shall we say, by changing everything that we did well at Watford, he turned into a tactical genius, and every weakness that Everton had, Parker seemed to play on. We saw Phil Jagielka being targeted like no other centre-half I've ever seen. Their full-backs were really ineffectual, but what did we see from Fulham that we didn't see throughout the rest of the opening of this season and the previous 32 games?
Well, I mean, we haven't really ever had a game where we felt in control. We always feel like we're on the back foot. We always lose a lead early on, you know, at least within the first half, and then you're always chasing the game. Well, I think by getting to half time in a position of strength, a position of strength at 0-0, we felt like we had a chance in the game. We came out, attacked it, and it paid off for us. But we've always been in a position of weakness before. Teams have targeted us, and we obviously smelled blood with Jacqui, as we say, at the back, and just went for it.
Yeah. And what do you think really changed fundamentally for Fulham that made them so good today?
For once, it looked like every single player on the pitch was really up for it. So they were playing the good football, but they were also putting in the tackles, they were putting in the effort, they looked fast, they looked like they wanted to win, really. I think Everton had come expecting an easy game, and they didn't get it. They came to Fortress Fulham, as it used to be, and we haven't seen Fortress Fulham for a long time, and it was fantastic to see it again today.
That first half, I thought, was really, really impressive, and there was one man that stood out for me who last year was our talisman, but we hadn't seen him play to the level we know he can, and that person's Tom Cairney. Today, I think we saw a Tom Cairney we've never seen before. Give me your thoughts on him just quickly.
I completely agree with you. He's my man of the match today. Even if he hadn't scored the goal, he would still have been my man of the match today. Last season, we saw what he could do in the midfield. He can run the game, he can change the game, he brings other players in, he can dictate the pace. We haven't really seen him do that in the Premier League. But to see him do that today, and more, to be putting in the tackles, to be so passionate, he was fantastic.
And this is a Everton pivot of Guy and Gomez that really ran the show against Arsenal last week. But what did Parker do to make sure that Everton just couldn't tick over and slice through Fulham and get the ball down?
Well, I think what he did is he pushed Cairney up as what a number 10 should be, which is right behind Mitrovic. So he's there hassling, as we said, you know, it's the first time I've seen him hassle 2 centre mids like that, and then it allowed Callum Chambers to always focus on the other one, and then that just gave Anguissa the space to really, as we've said on the podcast before, that he can break the lines. He was breaking through those lines, able to, you know, play in the likes of Joe Bryan, who got acres of space in the first half. So I think that was the main change, is actually Cairney hassling allowed the space for the rest of our midfield pivot to actually be effective.
So let's have a look at that first half in general. Fulham came out the blocks quite slowly, actually, and I thought we rode a couple of chances.
Yeah, slow but steady, I would say.
It was tenacious from Fulham without offering any real quality, but it wasn't until probably about 25 minutes in where Mitrovic really started to get a hold of the game, and he was so influential for us. What did he do for the people that haven't watched the game? What did he do that made him so effective?
I think he did what he often does, but he did it really well today. I would say he gets in the faces of defenders, but he's not in their faces because he's got their back to them. So he's getting the back of his head into the faces of defenders, his body in, and he obviously really enjoys that side of the game. But he was doing that particularly to Jagielka. At one point he was even doing it to the goalie. He was all over them. He was, and I don't know how he does it. Every game he's got defenders holding him down, often 2, sometimes 3, and yet he still manages to chest the ball down, kick it to one of his team. You know, it's his real strength as a forward, and I think perhaps he has gone off the boil a bit recently, or just against the bigger teams we played recently, he hasn't had the opportunities. Whereas today, he was back to what we used to see of him last season.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's kind of a point that AF touched on was that we pushed Kearney forward and has that nice duo in there of Callum Chambers and Anguissa that just allowed that freedom of expression, and someone that went quite unnoticed was Sessegnon, and he's not had the best of games, but today I thought he was very solid.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at that second half. When we got into half-time, there was a part of me that thought Everton are going to come out and they're going to really push on, and we'll struggle, but it's a Fulham that we haven't seen. You know, it comes out in the second half firing, and we took the lead through Kearney, and just give us a rundown on the goal.
I anticipated as well, exactly as you did, a Marco Silva rocket at half-time for that team, and they would come out and they would attack us, because it's what we used to.
Yes.
We come out for the second half, we start sluggishly, then a team will attack us. We did exactly the opposite to Everton. They obviously weren't expecting that, because we came into a gear that we haven't played in for most of the season, attacking with numbers into the box. And I actually said the same thing to you on the walk down here, that we haven't actually laid the ball off to Kearney on the floor for him to hit with his left foot. I don't remember doing it all season.
No.
It's always been him trying to find the space and saying, oh, he doesn't shoot as much. But we laid it off to him on his left foot. He shot and we scored. It's not rocket science, but it feels as if we haven't done that all season, because he hasn't been pushing up as high. He's always been quite deep.
Yeah, I think that the influence of Kearney on the game was certainly felt. But one person who I feel is either putting himself in the shop window in the last 4 or 5 games, either that or he's trying to cement a place for next season, is Anguissa.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get both of your thoughts on what he's done well, what he's changed about the dynamic of Fulham, and how you feel about him going into next year.
I would really like to think that this is not him putting himself in the shop window. I would like to think that since the injury and the sort of uncertainty at the beginning of the season, he has found his place. He feels at home, he's playing really well, he's putting lots of effort in. And I did notice when he was subbed off, having played fantastically well, Parker gave him the biggest hug. So obviously you can read many things into that, and maybe they're just, good mates. But you like to think that both Frank and maybe we'll come on the spot later, but they do see their futures at the club and they're really happy here. And I'd like to think Frank is playing well because he finally feels at home.
I totally echo the thoughts there. Is that I think as well that Parker's had a positive influence on him. He plays in his position that he used to. He's mentoring him into that role. We often forget that he's still a young player. He's still got room to grow into that role and to mature into it. And actually, by playing games and regularly is the best way of doing it. I think personally, if he was putting himself in the shop window, then I'm not sure what clubs would still come in for him at the price range that Fulham would want just yet. He's always said that he likes playing as part of a double pivot, and he hasn't been given that chance with Fulham. And if it was a double pivot, it was maybe with Kevin McDonald, who isn't the most mobile of players. I love him, but not the most mobile. So when he's given a chance next to Callum Chambers, if we can find another CDM to go alongside him next season, he would rip up the championship.
Yeah, he would. He really, really would.
I think we're all in agreement about that. And we'll touch on next season and Scott and managers, etc. towards the end of the podcast. But someone that I wanted to quickly touch on was someone that was a provider but then turned scorer for his 3rd goal for Fulham, I believe it is, which is Ryan Babel with a really assured finish over England's number 1. And I think for someone that's never been completely convinced by Babel, he was excellent today.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why people are saying they're not completely convinced. He blows hot and cold. But today, he was really on form. Maybe this has been his problem throughout his career. He's got skills, he's got pace, he's got strength, but sometimes he's also a bit inept. Today, there was no ineptness, it was just everything else. And actually, I felt when he was there one-on-one, I did think he was going to score. And similarly at Watford, it was a similar kind of goal. He seems to relish this get close, get personal, get the goalkeeper out of the way, get the ball in the net. It's, you know, he's a really good player, and we've really benefited from him coming in January.
This is a guy that is still being called up for the Dutch national team, and a national team that are trying to reinvent themselves around youth, but is still playing a really crucial part for them. Do you think perhaps that Babel is someone that we could keep hold of next year?
I don't personally think so. I think that after performances like this, he is going to get picked up. I know he looks great on a highlight reel on YouTube, but he will be picked up by another team that is sadly in a better division than Fulham. Maybe he's been, you know, we've seen players learn to love the cottage, and if it becomes a fortress like it was today, maybe he'll think, oh, that's my level. The Championship, I could really end my career on a real high of winning the Championship or something like that. I don't think it'll personally happen, but I'd love it to happen after today's performance.
Yeah.
Oh, he's another player who would rip up the Championship, but I agree with you. I don't think it's where he sees his career going.
That's fair enough. Some reports come out this week that he's signed a pre-contract with Galatasaray, so we'll see what the future holds for him. Just before we go on to next season, I just wanted to ask a very, I guess, direct question to both of you. Was this Fulham improving significantly under Scott, or was it a case that Everton are now on the beach after 3 massive wins? They didn't concede and really sort of showed what they could do under Marco Silva next year.
I spoke to some Everton fans before the game, and I was the most confident in the pub that Everton were going to win the game. They were not confident at all, and they were saying that they might have got these wins, but they felt like they had this performance that just happened today. They felt like they had that in them. So I think it's a combination of two things. I do think that Scott Parker's tactics, as you said, with moving Kearney further forwards, alongside Everton having a really bad game, both came together. I don't think it's one or the other necessarily.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's a bit of both. Everton have obviously played really well the last few games, and in fact all season they've been very consistent. They've maybe taken their eye off the ball, maybe a bit of complacency, thought they would come and get an easy game against this relegated team. Meanwhile, we have been steadily improving under Parker, and this was the opportunity that we were waiting for, and credit to the players, they really grabbed that opportunity.
Okay, so you just quickly said you think we've been improving under Parker. I know thousands out there will agree with you and thousands out there won't agree with you, and to be honest, Fulham, the supporters have been polarised all season by Jacanovic in, Jacanovic out, Ranieri good, Ranieri bad. But let's talk about Scott, and I thought Watford gave him a platform to prove his worth, and he started to do that at the first half of that game, but it really fell away the second half. But today, sort of proved his credentials. We talk about the thoroughness of a modern day manager, pinpointing areas of weakness, and he clearly done that by targeting Gay and Gomez, targeting Jagielka, really restricting their fullbacks and isolating Richarlison. How do we think that Scott would get on if he was given the full-time manager role next season? Could we build around him and the squad? What are your thoughts?
Really tricky. I do feel at the moment that it's Scott's to lose, as it were. He's in place at the moment. Often, particularly outside of football, maybe more often than in it, the job goes to the guy who's already doing the job. If he does the job well over the next few games, he's done it well over the last sort of 1.5-ish, then yeah, maybe he can, you know. And if he can keep Kearney, Frank, a few of the others, who are obviously playing well for him, it could go really, really well. On the other hand, he's got no experience of being a manager at all, really. The Championship, as we all know, is a fantastic but terrifying league. Do we want someone with more experience, maybe?
It's a ruthless place to learn the Championship. That's the problem, is that Does he need to play his trade in the lower leagues? The Championship is a slightly lower league, but we know any team can beat any team in the Championship. So I think he's going to learn a lot. If he does get the job on a full-time basis, he's going to learn a lot with us next season. But do we want a manager that's going to learn with us? Or do we want a manager, as you say, a more experienced one that's going to come in ready for all of the twists and turns that the next season will undoubtedly bring us as Fulham fans? My personal opinion is that I think that Parker won't get the job because, and Kit Simons has done him no favours with that, in the fact that we can look back to that. Kit did get the players playing for him, he did get one or two performances and then things started to drop, but when things don't go so well, that's when we really learn about Parker, and I don't think we can afford to do that right now.
Well, he's had a tough start. If we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, Scott has had an undoubtedly tough start. He's had 3 of the biggest teams in English football play against his Fulham side, and he's come out shining with everyone. I think the Chelsea game was a marked improvement on anything that Ranieri done for us. The Liverpool game was encouraging, and this game, really drove home that actually, given the time to prepare thoroughly, that Scott actually can pinpoint big things of opponents that can, be beneficial to us and detrimental to them.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I think he will be a good appointment should we make it, but I'm very wary that if we don't hit the ground running next year, it will be yet more change that we can't afford.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that Scott Parker could do a great job. It's just the risk element there that, we made the risk-free appointment of Ranieri, but is there any other proven Championship managers, or even maybe an assistant that could maybe come in and help guide Scott? We have Stuart Gray, who has the experience through that. It's good that he is back, but maybe there's just that one extra element to there of just Championship now to be able to guide him through next season, and then I'd be a little bit more okay with it.
Is there anyone, just as a final question, that's on your hit list, either signings-wise or manager-wise, that you would love to bring into the club for next season?
I'm more concerned about hanging on to players rather than signing new ones, to be honest. And I think with the managers, I would be happy with Scott unless somebody, another Jukanovic comes along and wants the job. I think that sometimes it's better the devil you know, and let's give him the rest of the 4 games, let's see what he can do.
If Scott could keep hold of, I know it's not his job to necessarily deal with some of the transfers and things, but if he can get the players bought into his plan for next season, and some of the likes of Frank, Kearney, and Mitrovic, we're all a bit unsure on whether Sessegnon's going to be there. But if he can get a core to the team, keep some of the players that all the fans we want to, then that would be a good start. But for me, I would still want maybe a David Wildman myself. I would still like him. But if it ends up being Scott, he needs a right back.
Very good point indeed. Now that brings Fulham and full-time to a close as we reviewed our 5th win of the season and our first home clean sheet from memory. One of only 2 we've recorded this year so far against an Everton team that were in form. I'd like to say thank you to Jacqui for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Please check out their blog. It's an absolutely incredible read after every single game. Fulhamish retweets it most weeks. If you don't get a chance to read our retweets, then please go and follow them on Twitter. Thank you very much for you, AF. It was always nice to chat. I'm glad you had such a relaxing time at the cottage today in the baking sun as we, again, recorded a victory. It was really nice to talk about a win, actually. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the future. Cheers.
Fulham way.